Today the Prius is back, and I had somebody request a video on doing the rear struts in this thing after my last video on this thing with checking all the suspension stuff. And this thing kind of was due at that point because the bushings were shot. Well, now at this point, it drove until it didn't drive anymore. Even this side, this is the good side, and we're sagging pretty low. We're riding really low over here, so we'll see when we get it apart. I'll show you what's going on. But that's the project for today, is swapping out the rear struts. And I've got the complete assemblies, so it should be a relatively easy project. So I'm going to show you how to do it. Starting out on the inside of the car, and what I've done is I've pulled out everything that was in here, no tools required. And then there's a 10mm bolt there and there where the little tie-down D-rings are. And I've removed those so that this is now loose. And with that flipped up here, look right in here, there's one of the nuts. They're 14mm nuts. And the other one is right in there. If I can get light on it, there we go. There's the second one tucked down in there. And I believe I'll be able to get both of these out without taking anything else out, just with a swivel socket and an extension. So we're going to try that out. All right, we've got it loosened up. We're going to fish it out with a magnetic tool, impact on it, and zip that one off. On the passenger side, we're going to have to dig in a little bit more because all this duct work for keeping the batteries at the correct temperature is in the way. So we're going to start out by taking out these two 10mm bolts. Now we can remove this duct right here. There's just a couple plastic push pins will pop out. We've got one back there, up there, and then we'll just slide it off the fan end, tilt it out, and we can sneak it out from down there. Now we've got access to the rear one and the front one. Well, I've got the wheels off on both sides, so here's the good side. And as noted in the video from a while ago, these lower bushings are just shot. You can just see there's the center of the bolt, and it's, you know, up high because the rubber's basically gone, like that on both sides. But the big problem, and this side there again is the good side, but there's a chunk of this spring broken off. There's part of the coil broken off, so it's not sitting in there like it's supposed to be. And that's the good side. Over here on the other side, we've got the same bushing problem on the bottom, but we've got a bigger issue with this spring. This spring has broken. You can see here's the bottom ring of the spring that broke off, so that the spring was no longer held in place on the spring perch, so it has just fallen down and is essentially doing nothing. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove these bottom bolts, because that's all that's left that's holding these rear strut assemblies in place. So these lower bolts are 19mm. And there you go. Now we're going to watch it because we've already got the top unbolted. So there is one more bolt I forgot about. There's a 14mm bolt coming from the bottom here. So we're going to zip that thing out. We've got our strut out. We've got our new strut assembly. We're going to slide that right up in here. And then we've got the bolt greased up here. It's a little bit of a tough angle to reach in here. So I've got my tall jack stand under here, which is pushing up a little bit, not much, but you could use a floor jack or whatever. And then we can pull this over, and you could not tighten up that top bolt if that made things a little bit easier here, but we can pull this over. We're actually gonna let this down a little bit, line it up, and maybe just tap it on. And then we've got our washer, our nut. Well, I can't say that I've run into this exact scenario before, but I can't get to this nut because this spring is jammed in here, just absolutely jammed in there. And of course, going right over that. So what I'm gonna do, the end of the spring is right over here. So I'm just gonna take a cutoff wheel and just cut this last loop off, and then we'll be able to get it. So we've got everything put together now. We've got the bolts tight up there to hold it in place. We've got the nuts tight on the bottom on both sides. So everything is looking good. So I'm gonna put the wheels back on, and I'm gonna drop this thing down onto the ground. So the new strut assemblies did come with new nuts, but I like these factory ones. These are really nice, so we're gonna reuse those. So we're gonna have a relatively easy time getting to the back two bolts. We're probably gonna have to use my magnet to set these down on the studs and maybe spin it a little bit just to get a couple threads going before we put a socket on and zip them down. So we're gonna get right onto that. I just reached a screwdriver down there and just spun that nut on just a couple threads so it's not going to fall off. So I've got all four of them started, and now I can put the impact on them and zip them down. We'll tuck it in the battery end first, and then we'll slide it over the blower motor outlet. Then we've got the holes lined up. We can put these pins back in. And then we're ready to swing the main cover back over here. I think we got the tabs lined up so we can start popping them in. Got our one pin up on the front here. Back here we can flip this down. There's some pins that line up there. We'll tighten them down. We'll start piecing our interior stuff back in. We'll drop the tub back in. Put the end piece in, the main cover. Here we are sitting back down on the ground, and you can see it is inches higher up. That was in rough shape, and we have a big gap over the wheels now. So I would say that was a success, and this thing is gonna ride much better now.